patricians, the upper class, and Julius Caesar was popular with the lower classes. So part of the dynamic there was that the senators wanted to remove someone who was threatening their status quo. But they did it in the name of liberation. They called themselves liberatores. And so they said it, and according to, tradition, some of them may have said, sic semper tyrannis. That's Latin for thus always to tyrants, as they plunged in the knives. And Julius Caesar died, and behold, the republic was restored, wasn't it? No, it fell into civil war. Calamitous civil war for years until the republic finally gave way and the empire, the Augustan Empire, was established. And the reason I tell you this is that if you're fighting for liberation for yourself only and not for others, you will fail. Your liberation is inadequate a cause to live your life. At some point, you must do it not only for yourselves, but for others. For example, can any of us really claim to be free when others are not? I read James Russell Lowell's poem a few weeks ago, if there breathes on earth a slave, are we truly free and brave? If we are devoted to spiritual liberation, but are not working for that same freedom on behalf of others, are we not only serving ourselves? Israel was freed, of course, to go across into the wilderness, but not just to wander around, but to serve God, to answer to the truth. Freedom has a purpose, is what I'm saying. It has a purpose larger than your personal liberty to do what you want and think what you want and believe what you want. It is to serve with integrity the cause of freedom itself. Some of you may be familiar with the Buddhist notion of the Bodhisattva. Are you familiar with this concept? If you're not, let me tell you. In Buddhist religion, every one of us is on a path toward, not salvation, toward enlightenment. It takes lots of lifetimes, hundreds perhaps. And then there are those that get right to the edge of perfect salvation, perfect enlightenment. But because they know so many are still waiting, they say, wait just a minute. Before I cross over into nirvana, I'm going to turn around and help some other people get across too. That's the Bodhisattva path. What I'm suggesting is that the way of service is a Bodhisattva process. Yes, we are free to believe what we want, to think for ourselves, to have any theology we want, but in the end, if we are not helping others to experience that same integrity, if we're not standing on the edge of actual freedom to help others come with us, to come across the Red Sea, to cross out of bondage into their own wilderness, and yes, ultimately their own Sinai, if we're not serving others on this path, we are not doing our job. And that's why it's the path to greatness. Months ago, I quoted Martin Luther King Jr., and you can never go wrong when you read him, who said that you don't have to be a PhD or a senator or a rich man to be great. Anyone can be great because anyone, everyone, can serve. I'm suggesting that your path to spiritual greatness is not measured in how free you are, how different you are, how individual you are, but how much you help others discover their own path of liberation. Whether it's your children, your spouse, your workers, your parents, or in the nameless way we do it when we serve others in the mercy ministries of cooking, sheltering, knitting. Do you know we have a knitting ministry here? We do. You know what they do? They knit shawls. Where do we do with these shawls? Well, when Matthew or I or David Smith go off to the hospital, we take one and then we give it to them. It's a gift. It's a gift. And it comes with other things like little peanut butter crackers and a crossword puzzle book. But you know something? The most important thing I heard this past fall was I can't even remember how many months ago it was. You know who you are out there. I won't mention you by name. There was a wonderful member whose husband was slowly dying. It was a peaceful passing, but a sadness because it is your spouse. And so I brought him the bag that included the prayer shawl. And in the few days he had before he finally passed away, They literally cuddled underneath of it. It's impossible to have a word to go with that. That is the service of liberation. When you can free people to be who they are, just who they are, not who other people want them to be a couple or an individual or a family. And it doesn't have to be a prayer shawl. What I'm asking you is to imagine something that liberal religion has never imagined before. That we have a celestial vision of what the world could and should be. And it's not just free of, it's free for something. And I want you to imagine that with me, because I'm going to build this up over the next several weeks as we go through liberation. I want you to imagine that all of us, every one of us, can live that vision of Isaiah somehow. And how does that mean? What do I mean by that? I mean, well, if you read that vision of Isaiah where he ends with, "Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn any more," those same words show up in the prophet Micah, and he concludes them with the following, and you've known this: "But they shall all sit, each under their own vines and fig trees, and no one shall make them afraid." What would the world look like if that were true? Really? I don't mean we all have to have grapes or figs, although they're great. I love grapes and I do love figs. Imagine a life where you could tend to your garden, whatever that is, whether it be a physical garden, a musical garden, an artistic garden, a family garden, a work garden. I mean, a place where you cultivated, not just harvested, where you were able to be a giver of life wherever you were. Imagine a world like that. I just want you to start imagining that. The poet May Sarton wants us to be hopeful gardeners of the Spirit. That's what we're here to do. Not just to bring ourselves to life, but to bring others to life, to plow the furrow. Remember the plow, the furrow into which the seeds can go and grow and become fully alive. I want you to imagine a world in which all of us are growing and completely alive, cultivating ourselves and others. I want you to imagine what that world would be like. To think of each of us as a seed dropped by whatever is holy, that thing for which the word God is so inadequate, that will grow and produce 100-fold. Is this not a vision worthy of every heaven you've ever heard? Is this not better than harps and clouds? Of course it is. Follow me for the next few weeks as we make this vision clearer, because when people know what we have to offer, a vision of everyone alive and growing, not being the gardener only, but also the vine, producing figs as well as eating them. When they know what we have to say, we won't be able to keep them away. How great is that? Amen, friends. Amen. By the way, we're not doing the last hymn you see. I want to do a different one. And I want to do it, and I'm going to serve you because I'm going to play the piano part. Because I don't like the piano part that's there. So that means, A, I'm going to make mistakes, and B, you're going to forgive me, and C, you're going to have a good time. The hymn is, "Guide my feet while I run this race."